connecting. And so today's Power Hour, we're going to be talking about how to build your dream team. So I'm hoping you can see okay, and joining us through Facebook and through the Zoom link. So I'm Katrina Aarsman, CEO of Pure Bookkeeping, and joined with Debbie Roberts. Hi, Deb.
Hi, Katrina.
Great to have you on the call. And hi, Sharon.
Hi,
Sharon
Katrina.
Francisco. Yes, it's been a while. Was it yesterday we did that webinar? It's all good stuff. We enjoy presenting and adding value to the community, and love what we do. Very fortunate to have the opportunity to do this. So so today we are going to be talking about how to build this dream team. So please post any questions that you do have on the Facebook as you're watching it, and even after this event, after you've watched it, pop some questions in and tag us, and we are quite happy to answer any of your questions. So today, hi Jeremy, thank you for joining us. So today, let's get started with around our expectations of, what a dream team is. So today we'll be talking a bit about the training involved to build that dream team out, setting expectations, what is strong and healthy communication for your team, and some basic tips on onboarding. So Deb, do you want to get started with the conversation?
Yeah, it's a pretty big topic, and something that I'm quite passionate about, because look, I made a lot of mistakes in growing my team, put on the wrong people, didn't think I needed to set expectations. I made a lot of assumptions that, look, they'll be like me, because that's what I wanted. My clients like me, and I wanted to clone me. So I thought, if I just get that bookkeeper and teach her my stuff, then she'll be like me. But it's a lot more involved in that. And really, one of the key things that I found really helped set expectations and align the new recruit to my culture and my core values was to do what I called a staff orientation session. You might call it, some people call it an induction, whatever you'd like to call it. But the reason I like the word orientation is because I felt like I was orientating the new recruit to what was my core values, what's my vision, what's my mission. Some people, a common mistake is that you get a bookkeeper and you go, great, thank goodness, here's your first client, and you bypass the whole induction process. And it's, it won't work. I really made many mistakes by avoiding doing that, or I didn't even realize it was necessary at the start. I just thought, yes, here you are, now you can do the work. But you don't build trust or loyalty or culture in your team if all they are doing is the work. You have to spend time aligning them with your culture, to getting to know them as human beings, and it's really about spending time, and rather than going full throttle, here's some clients, just spend, and it takes an hour or two right at the start to be able to dedicate that time and really go through all the important things. There's other things like administrative processes and things like that, but that staff induction was a critical part of the onboarding of a new staff member.
Yeah, it's so important to have that induction and the expectations, and even following on from, the induction where you are expressing, the purpose of your business, and empowering and engaging your staff member around what your vision for your business is, and getting them engaged in that way. We also want to set those expectations in everything that we do. So from all of the work that they're about to do, we want to make it really clear And this is where, you know, that healthy communication, or that, you know, the very detailed information is passed over to the staff, so that they know exactly what they need to do for their clients. And I know for myself, when I was building my business and I had staff on, and I just pass over, here is a client, here is a box of books, you know, go and do what you know you're doing. You know how to process, you know the software, you know how to bank rec, just go and do it. So firstly, they'd spend a lot of time in organising all the paperwork and, you know, moving papers around because they didn't know which direction to start, what the priorities were, what needed to be done. And then they'd start entering, you know, personal bank statements information and a whole lot of personal information. So I hadn't given them the direction as to what they needed to do. So there was no clear client manual at the start for me. To say, these are the bank accounts we enter and that we reconcile. These are the processes that we do for the aged payables. No, we don't need to enter all the creditors in. We only do it as a cash accounting system. We don't do it on accrual. So, you know, you waste so much time and energy in fixing the things that should have been done correct the first time, or wasting their time in doing things that did not need to be done. So clear expectations of how to do the work and what exactly to do is really necessary right at the start. So even though, you know, we're going to discuss, you know, who to put on and the team that we're building, it also comes back to you as the business owner to make sure that you have set the right boundaries and the right framework and the right systems for them to follow. Because you could get the best staff member on and they could still waste a whole lot of money and time for you. So, you know, think about, you know, going back to what the foundations of your business are. What do you need to be put in place before you can have a successful transition for a staff member and assist that staff member succeeding in your business as well? We've got Nathali. Hi, Nathali, from TOA joining us today. How are you?
Hello, good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, really good, thank you.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm really happy to be part of this. So
yeah,
nice to meet you.
I've got a question. Is that how we pronounce your name?
Natalie, it's actually, well, Natalie, it's the French way. So it's
Okay.
got my little H in there, but it throws
Yes.
people off. But
Yes.
yes, it's just really Natalie in English. So
Right.
keep it
Lovely.
easy like that. Thank you for asking. But whatever you want to call me, Nat, I get Nat in Australia now. So it's usually the short version.
Yeah, lovely. Yeah. And I imagine, and Natalie, with your experience in, you know, putting bookkeepers on with the onboarding process, how important it is to have the system set up in the bookkeeping business and the onboarding process so clear. What do you find with your clients putting bookkeepers on?
Yeah, I agree with you 100%, Katrina, because it's really what we find is that when the most common reason that there isn't success in any onboarding or is because managers aren't setting clear expectations. So that's what we're finding. So when we have people come back to us and say, oh, it's not working out or things like that, it's usually that they don't put in the time to give those clear expectations, to set up KPIs also. So that is really part of the emphasis that we put on in the onboarding process, is to actually accompany our partners in setting those KPIs and identifying what the role is, and also over the month. So starting out with the key, I would say, tasks or expectations at the beginning. And of course, as the person grows in a function and gets more used to what they're doing, then you can start developing that position. So having that vision for it is absolutely key. And that's whether it's someone, whether it's someone outsourced or in your own, directly in your team. I'd say that's definitely the key. So that is the main, when people ask us why, when does it not work out to actually outsource in the model that we use with full-time team members, that is definitely our first answer. So, yep.
Yeah.
Agree with you. Couldn't agree with you more from what you've said. So, yeah.
Awesome, thank you. Sharon, have you had any experience with the bookkeepers that you mentor in, you know, onboarding and creating that team as well?
Yeah, I've just I've been thinking so much back when I was building the business with Tanya, and to begin with, I was so overwhelmed, like the juggle of work coming in and making sure that I had bookkeepers coming on board at just the right time, and that balance with, to begin with, I was like sick in the stomach to make sure that it all worked well. So my anticipation or enthusiasm to get somebody on, obviously, like everyone else, it was like, oh, I'm really desperate because I've got work coming in. And I remember to begin with, Katrina, I used to get so excited. I'd get these CVs through, and these like people with like 30 years experience, and they're this and they're that, and they've got, it just looked magnificent. And I would think that this is great, I've got the one, this is the one. I'd show Tanya. And obviously being part of Pure Bookkeeping, we'd always sort of say, well, Tanya say, well, wait till they go through the skills test to see. And honestly, that process of just, you know, you're so keen to want to get somebody on, you just want to fast track it and go, yeah, no, look at her, this is great, I'll go with this one. But, you know, I think that the process, I think there was 2 scripts. Phone scripts were definitely designed to cull, like to the questions that you outlined, Deb, were designed to cull people out. And then you get to the stage of doing the skills test, and again, you know, they've got to pass by a certain amount. And I think just having all of that culling steps to get out to the outcome of having, you know, 3 or 4 that are ready to go through that next stage, I think is really important. But definitely one of the biggest, I think Natalie was sort of saying, with just that framing or orientation to begin with, we just took a lot of time in that orientation stage. Like we, you know, I would start off by saying, this is the way we play the game. And just make sure that they knew, like we'd do a whole bunch of positioning slides, like above and below the line. So we operate in this team at our business, we operate above the line. So above the line is taking accountability, responsibility, and ownership, and below the line is blame, excuse, denial. So everything that we do, we take accountability for. And it's not about making people wrong, it's just saying I take 100% accountability for the work that I'm given. And the other thing that, like the orientation manual, Deb, is fantastic that you designed, and I added in some slides like above and below the line. And also, you know, and I would say, you know, with our business, we don't point to the people. It's not a people problem, it's a system problem. So whatever goes wrong, don't feel bad. We'll just look at the system. What have you missed in the system? And if they haven't followed the system, then it's like a, you know, obviously a sit down and, you know, you've got to follow the system, because that's what it's there for. And we put a lot of time into that. So, and, you know, just things like team. What does team mean? Together, everyone achieves more. I mean, it's just, yeah, it's just all those nice little things. And there's another one that I loved, another positioning slide. It's a picture of the world, and it's this little stick figure up the front running away from their problems. And what happens when you run away from your problems? They catch up to you again. So if you do something that's, you know, that you think that you've got away with a mistake or something with a client, that's going to come around, because at some point you're going to hear about it from a client. So it's, rather than doing that, stay above the line, talk about it. And I think the other thing that I made sure that I did is just make sure that it was an environment of fun. So we did fun things. We went away for like wine tasting events, and we just made sure that they felt like they weren't a cog in a wheel, that they felt like they were part of something living and breathing and growing. And that's why, I could go on forever, but that's why it's so important to have mission statements and what this is all about. What are we doing? What are we trying to achieve together as a team? And you're an integral part of that team. And I mean, I had all contractors. I didn't have any full-time staff. They were all contractors, pretty much working full-time hours. So yeah, it was, yeah, I think definitely coupled with the pure bookkeeping steps and what to do and the orientation manual and just my little sort of positioning slides and how we play the game above and below the line and all that sort of stuff. I think it makes such a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've got other stuff. That's it for now.
Yeah, and for me, like, we're talking about building a loyal team, and communication is an essential part of that, and setting expectations, as you mentioned, Sharon, right from the start with the induction. And it even, it began with me in that very first phone call about how I was communicating with that person, with the candidate in that very first phone call, and setting expectations. This is how we do this, and this is where we work, and this is how or it's, I learned that it's communicating and setting expectations is an integral part of successfully building a solid team that's going to be loyal to you. And you start off by, you mentioned the skills test. One of the testing points of that skills test is, do they actually ask questions? That's part of communication. Like, there's actually mistakes in the skills test that they're supposed to actually pick up and say, how come that isn't, that doesn't seem to match up with that? Because one of the things I learned in the early days of when I was on my own and I saw mistakes left by bookkeepers was that they didn't ask questions. They didn't feel safe to ask questions, perhaps. They thought, oh, what will the accountant say, or what will this person say? And so they guessed the answer, or they just shoved it into general or something like that. And that's where the mistakes happen. So I thought one of the most important things for me was, in terms of communication, is, are you prepared to ask questions? And so I created this test so that they had to ask questions. They couldn't actually complete the test without asking them. And I do remember I had one candidate actually go through the whole test and didn't ask me one question, and then stood up an hour later or something like that and said, I'm done now. And I went, really? Okay. Well, I don't know how you got through that test without asking a question. And of course, he had shoved things in all, he was the perfectly wrong bookkeeper. And because he didn't ask questions, you've got to make your team right from the start feel comfortable and feel safe. As Sharon, you said, it's not, yes, they will make mistakes. We are all human. We all make mistakes. And it's not about blame or anything like that. It's like, whenever one of my staff made a mistake, I wouldn't crack it or anything like that. I would just say, take a deep breath, and then say, okay, what system do I need to create in order to avoid that from happening again? And then provide the training for the staff member and explain the consequences of that. There's a lot of teaching. It's, in some ways, like, they're your children. You don't avoid, or you explain things to your kids, because you need to take the time to explain things so they go, oh, okay, I get why you're doing that now. Katrina setting expectations at the start. This is actually how we do this. This is why we are doing this, and this will be the outcome of that. Oh, okay, I get that. And they're intelligent adults. But if you just go, shove, there's the work, and off you go, I think it's actually disrespectful to actually, to do that with one of your staff. They don't belong to you. If you want to build loyal staff, you've got to be loyal to them. And the way you are loyal to them is you show them respect. You show them common courtesy. They're not just cogs in a wheel. And Sharon's saying, you talk about your mission. That was an integral part of the orientation process, because I wanted them to understand that they are not just bookkeepers. We are empowering business owners around their finances. And they are an important part of my team. They are not a cog in the wheel. And but you've got to spend the time. It's not much and all as you're busy and, oh, do I really need to do this? If you don't, you won't be able to build a loyal team. You won't. They'll just look for someone else where they can feel feel that they are valued, feel that they actually are doing something important. I think it's Seth Godin in Tribes talks about everyone wants to feel part of a tribe. And that's the culture that I created in my business, that they had my back, but they knew, like, I would sack clients if they were disrespectful to my staff. I would just say, no, that's not on, and I would sack the client. And that sort of loyalty, they did the same for me. Like, if a client came to them and said, let's cut Debbie out of the equation and I'll just work with you and I'll pay you a bit more. And they said, that it did happen. And they just said, every time they went back to the client and said, my relationship is with Debbie, my commitment, my loyalty is with Debbie. And if you've got a problem with what she's charging or whatever, then you need to have a conversation with her. It just has this massively beautiful, it's a wonderful thing to be part of. I sold my business in 2014, and we still meet twice a year for dinner because we love spending time with them, my friends. You know, that's what happens when you spend time and build communication, set expectations.
Yeah, that's a wonderful story. Excuse me. And I think with the creating a system for your own business, from the induction manual to the interview questions and the skills testing, I think it's really, as you said, Deb, it's really important to put time in to create that, or, you know, access Pure Bookkeeping's, you know, that you've already done it, written it for everyone. It allows you to go through a process and ask the questions. And if the questions don't come back, you know, if you're starting to get a gut feel of this person is not going to be aligned with my, you know, values, or, you know, work in with my culture, or do the work that I want them to do, you're going to get that feeling and those decisions right from the get-go before you even put them on, which is so important, rather than putting anybody on because on paper they look great. And a lot of people do, because they always boast of how good they are. They can, you know, they're experts in these softwares. But once you start asking questions, and so you need to have that system in place to be able to go back to that and go, you know, this is my process. I can compare apples with apples. I know for myself, I was desperate to put a staff member on. It was between Christmas and New Year, a staff left. I didn't want to start the new year without a new staff member. I did not go through the process of testing them. She seemed good on paper. She gave me some red flags. She said that she didn't like messy clients. She, you know, so she didn't like to do rescue jobs, or she wanted everything perfect. And like, in a real world, that never happens until, you know, you've got your teeth into it and fixed it all. I put her on, and I took 3 months to get rid of her. I had to, you know, make excuses, get back the Pure Bookkeeping manuals because she had access to them, and yeah, all doing good. I need to edit these things, and then just move her out gradually, because she was, you know, logged into a whole lot of work. So it was a difficult process. So it took me months just to get rid of her, and I could have avoided that by going through the systems that I had, the skills testing, asking the questions, listening to your gut feel. And acting on your gut feeling. Like there's a gut instinct there for a reason.
Yeah,
it's, you know, acting on that.
I'll give you a perfect example where I didn't listen to my gut and it came back to bite me. Was I had this great bookkeeper, scored really well on the skills test, was very excited about that, went through the induction process and the bit where it started off by talking about my mission and, you know, to empower business owners and vision and things like that. And she just quickly responded back with something like, oh yeah, my last employer was all big on all that vision and mission and everything. And I actually felt that my gut had this little tweak, and I didn't listen to it. I thought, I don't know what she means by that, but surely she wouldn't mean what it sounds like.
She doesn't mean that.
So I brushed it over, and the same thing happened, Katrina. It took me, she was bad mouthing me. It's like the team, there was no gossip, there was no, behind the scenes sort of talk about Debbie or anything like that. But one of my team actually came to me and said, you need to speak to so-and-so because she's actually bad mouthing you in the kitchen or behind your back. And she was completely, poles apart from what my vision and what I was trying to do to unite the team and create. She had her own agenda. I didn't listen to my gut, and I paid dearly for it, and it took months to get her out. And so, yeah, absolutely listen to your gut. And that only happens if you take the time to speak to your candidates, to talk to your staff member. And so that even happened at the orientation process. The very first, she hadn't even started working for me. And I could have avoided months of pain if I just had have said, what do you mean by that? You've said that in a very offhanded, disrespectful kind of way. What do you actually mean by that? And I'm sure she would have unraveled, and it would have saved me months of grief.
Yeah, so we're looking for that, that right person, and the questions that we get to ask gives us an idea about those. Natalie, do you have experience in, what qualities would you be looking for when you're hiring a bookkeeper?
Yes, I suppose the most common that we usually get is some attention to detail. The second one is actually good communication. And that's what we're most often. So when we go through the recruitment process, we actually ask every partner that's coming on board what is important to them as a personality and characteristics. Coming back to what has been said the last 10, 15 minutes is, it's very important. And I think that that's where the investment in time and also financially in understanding a system is very, very important, because we get what a lot of bookkeepers don't realize is that they actually have a lot of specificities. Everyone's different, and every little business, whether it's a sole prac to a larger number of people, function very differently. And when I speak to people, they seem to think that every bookkeeper coming on, every type of data entry or admin support is going to be exactly the same, but we're all different. And we really need to embrace that. And that's why that communication during an interview process, listening to your gut feel is important. And that's why actually with TOA, our partners are part of the interviews, because you choose the person that you personally fit with and relate to. And it's very important because it is a long-term, everyone wants a long-term solution and wants that to, if you're looking to grow your business or even just have a harmonious business in a long term, you want to be able to create that connection. So to answer your question, usually it is communication is the first one. And we take that time to discuss with, whoever's hiring. We actually say, we want the person that will be their mentor, that will be their champion, the one that will be discussing with them every day, because that relationship, I would say, is the most important. If we're looking at more characteristics, we usually attention to detail is very important for bookkeepers. But I would actually come back to to what was said previously also about someone asking questions. So that usually comes out during the interview process. If they're not interested in asking questions back to you, well, then that means they're not the type of person that might create that dynamic relationship and be actually interested in those specificities that you have as a firm. So those are all the things that at least we look for and that we find that usually comes out throughout the process. So definitely, keeping in mind, bookkeepers, we're all different. Not everyone functions the same way, and not every personality is the same, and not every manager is the same. So keeping that in mind. That's what I would say is the priority.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And that sort of also leads into the investment in time in yourself as a leader to understand exactly what it is that you want and the people that you want to work with. Yeah, so it's going through that process, creating those systems for yourself to be able to identify what it is you want. Because a lot of people, and I speak to a lot of bookkeepers that just want to jump in and get a staff member, and they go, we want these skills, this time, these hours, this, qualifications, this, ability, but they forget about, what else makes that person and how important that is to put that right fit in with you. So having a couple of conversations, it's not just a one conversation or one skills test. I know in pure bookkeeping we have the phone conversation before they go to the skills test, and then they have a face-to-face interview. And I used to also take my candidates, because I had a local business, across the road for a coffee. So you get to talk to them about different parts of their life, if you like, and their culture, outside of the work environment. So you're getting a bit more casual about the family and about their time commitments, and so you're getting a better feel for for that person as well. So the more you can learn about the person and pre-work about yourself, how you work as a leader and what you want, is going to help you build that dream team, that help you succeed with whoever you do put on. I think that's really important.
Yeah,
so
and I think another just thought, it just popped into my mind then, that when I was creating and building my dream team, I was always absolutely 100% honest with my team. So there was no, I often hear bookkeepers say they're not going to recruit until they have every system in place and it's all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. When you're really busy, that's unlikely to happen. So you can aim for it, you can try your hardest and things like that. And what I usually say is, instead of, it doesn't have to be perfect. Life is not perfect. Your business will always be evolving. So rather than, I guess, putting on a facade that, my business is perfect and I've got all the systems in place and now I'm going to recruit this person and they'll think I'm awesome and stuff like that. It's you just have an honest conversation with them and say, look, I'm in the process of putting my systems into place. I'm going to recruit now and I'm really excited about having you on board, but I actually need some help. I need help from you to implement I've got the ideas, I know what I need to do, but I just don't have the time to implement it all. So I'm going to recruit, and so you enroll them, you engage them, you get them excited about the project of not just bookkeeping, it's actually helping you create the systems. But in and then the walk begins, the walk together of honesty and reliability and being truthful about, things that are not quite right, or, gee, you let me down about that. And, having honest, as I say, they're not cogs in a wheel, they're human beings. And yes, they might let you down sometimes. You might let them down sometimes. But if you can be honest with them, you will build trust. They will see that you're not trying to be perfect, because people see through that. They see through the facade, because when they only, pull open the curtain a little bit and they see that there's no systems in place, and then what you told me just before, that everything was perfect and all the systems were in place, and I've just had a peek in there and it's not. So what part of trust, how does that build trust? So you must be honest, and that means being a bit vulnerable as well, which you might find a little bit confronting but I've got to be, I'm the leader, I am the manager, I've got to be the one that's strong and holding. No, you don't have to. But that's not my management style anyway. And it worked for me to be completely honest. And I think that's how I then built loyalty and trust and friendship, because you're honest with your friends. So if you want to build loyalty with your team, they need to become part of, your family in a way. even if it's a remote team, whatever, you want to know what's going on in their world. Take a genuine interest in what's going on. In fact, even with a remote team, you have to do that. It's even a little bit harder because you can't take them all out for coffee or go out for dinner or something like that. So you've got to find other ways of getting to know them and communicating with them as well. But be honest. Don't try to pretend it's something that it's not.
Mm.
We definitely did that. Sorry, Katrina.
You go, Sharon.
Yeah, no, we definitely did the same thing, Deb. We it wasn't perfectly systemized when, you know, we started kicking off, bringing people on. And we actually said that, like, we're going to need help systemizing this. We're going to need your help to do that. And it was kind of like, it was a nice thing to be able to share with them. And they were excited to be able to be part of that, building something that is going to, you know, do once, and, you know, other people can use that. But I also wanted to say, I know we're sort of, Deb and Katrina both sort of said about making sure that you've got bookkeepers when you want them, and then that last dash to be able to get somebody. My strategy, and it may not work for everyone, but my strategy was to, every 3 months, I would put an ad in Seek, whether I needed somebody or not, which was really scary because I only had contractors, and I was constantly surprised by, I'd sometimes not get anyone, which was fine because sometimes I didn't need them. But even if I did get a couple, I'd say, look, you know, I'm not ready for somebody just yet, but I know, like, I'm out there building, you know, building the client base and bring them in. Would you be okay to, you know, wait for 3 months until work starts coming in so I can pass it? And like 90% of the time, they're like, yeah, sure, no problem. So it was like I had somebody sitting there, and our stipulation was that they had to be available for us for a minimum of 20 billable hours a week. So generally, like, they, you know, I was always surprised. Yeah, most of the time they were like, okay, yeah, sure, no worries. So I had somebody there waiting when the work was coming in, and I had, you know, was able to hand that over. So yeah, I just sort of mentioned that as a strategy. And obviously, you know, with offshoring, you know, that's to say, like, you've got somebody sitting there ready to go. Obviously, it takes a little while to get somebody on board, but, you know, either way, I think it's good to have that strategy in place. The other thing that I did a lot of, which is just referring to your leadership sort of skills, Katrina, when you were saying before that we've got to build those. One of the things, I had monthly meetings with my girls, and they were mandatory. And I'd say that at the orientation, that these meetings were mandatory. And we had a couple that would Zoom in after they initially came to the first few face-to-face. But I worked heavily with DISC. I'm not sure if you've heard of DISC personality profiling. So I'd get each of the girls to go through DISC, and we'd all share our different personalities, because I think just with that communication you were talking about before, Deb, it's really important for them to understand the different personalities with clients. So I'd get them with each of their client base to write down what they thought each of the clients were. So then they can communicate in such a way, you know, that would get the best outcome for them and with each other when we're communicating. So I thought that was a good way to sort of set, I guess, a leadership sort of thing with training. And it's fun. Doing DISC is really fun because you learn more about yourself and everyone on the team. So
yeah, no, that's awesome. One of the things that you mentioned about, you know, recruiting every 3 months or putting an ad out every 3 months, one of my mentors told me that I should be recruiting all of the time. I should have my mind open to recruiting all of the time. And if somebody was to step into your network and you weren't ready for it, and if they were good, you would find a job for them. You would find a role for them. So to keep an open mind, because a lot of people, a lot of bookkeepers, you know, do, and I did initially, you work through, you go through so much work, you get busier and busier, and you get, you know, your hours expand, and you're doing extra hours, and your staff are all up to pussy's bow, and you go, oh my God, I can't go on anymore. I need a bookkeeper now. So it doesn't help when you need a bookkeeper now. You need to plan out for the next process, and it can take for anybody, onshore or offshore, it can take 2 to 3 months to put a bookkeeper on. So you need to plan out early enough, and you need to open your mind to the part of wanting to put staff on now all of the time, so that you're always open to it, that you're always looking for it. So if you had a closed mind, you won't be looking for it, and somebody could be walking down your path. You could have a conversation with somebody that they're moving in 6 months' time or whatever, and you're closed, so you don't even think of that option. So I'd highly recommend that you're changing your mindset to recruiting all of the time and looking out for that ideal person, and when you find them, find a role for them.
I agree, and I had that on my KPIs, was to recruit every 3 months. So it was basically an ongoing cycle, but it is dependent on your marketing. So they actually go hand in hand. You in order to feed all the family that is coming through and joining your team, you need to have the marketing, the momentum in the marketing. So you're networking, meeting with accountants, you're doing all that. So it's not you don't have just one role. We've talked about the different domains of the business. It's marketing is an integral part of that ongoing process of recruiting on every 3 months or so. The other thing that I did was I put my recruits on either part-time or and it was the same as Sharon. They needed to be available at least a couple of days a week, and they're either contractors or part-timers. And after a few months, one of my contractors said, "Look, I've been offered a full-time position with an accounting firm." And it was actually the accounting firm that referred her to us. And then, so he was wanting her back. And I said, "Can you give me, I just need 3 months. I will fill your books to whatever you want. And if you want to be full-time, we'll put you on as full-time. But I need 3 months." And I scrambled, because she was one of my best bookkeepers. She was with me right till I sold the business. And I scrambled with my marketing and just ramped it all up, meeting with accountants, networking, all the marketing. And then I just was giving her all the extra work. So yes, you can, but you'd need to get to have that momentum with the recruitment. You need to have, it goes hand in hand with momentum with your marketing.
And that's a good strategy, Deb, because I know for me, I was exactly the same. If I've got somebody waiting there, I'd hustle to try and get out to bring them in. And it sort of forces you into the place to get out there and do all the, you might be a bit slack at the moment. So somebody's waiting there, you get out and get busy. So yeah, it's a good strategy to push you out the door to start doing that sales work that you need to do.
Exactly. Bye, Jeremy. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, he's going.
Yeah. Natalie, did you have some comments around, I'm thinking your clients putting a bookkeeper on and then putting their systems in place, and then I imagine they would be ready for new bookkeepers as well. So you don't usually stop at one bookkeeper, one staff member. It's creating the systems and that momentum. So are you finding that's happening for your clients too?
Yes, 100%. So we actually grow more organically, bring more team members on with our current partners than we do with actually bringing on new bookkeepers that are looking at staff. And why that is because the momentum's there. Once you're, as you were saying, once you start and you have a good element in your team that you trust, you actually have more time to spend on, recruiting more clients yourselves, to actually spending more time on marketing, looking at even that staffing new people. And as you're more aware and have more time to look at what's happening around you and not have your nose in actually your books, it gives you more opportunities to grow. And that's what we really find. So that's where that we have that momentum of us bringing on more team members that can support you and do all of that back office work for you. So it's definitely something that's growing more and more because we are growing organically with our current partners. So definitely recommend always keeping an eye out on it, because it's actually probably our biggest issue. I get most bookkeepers, when they finally contact us, it's because they're exactly in those situations of we need someone right away. It's too late, but all that anticipation is the key to it, and having that strategy. And I think what you all offer also as mentors and everything is because you give that long-term vision and strategy. And that's what a lot of, bookkeepers don't really take the time to do, because they're just focusing and worried about that daily work. And if we can help them step back, because it's not easy for us either. By the time they contact us, sometimes it's too late, or it's too much in a rush, and then they'll start saying, but then I don't have time to train, and I don't have time for this, and I don't have time. But it's actually taking the problem from the wrong side. If you can anticipate that, build a strategy, work with people like yourselves to have that long-term vision, so that when recruitment comes, it's a natural process, whether it's onshore or offshore. It's a natural process, and you take the time to choose people that you really want to work with and are beneficial to your business. That's where, even for us, we help you grow, because we can bring on more and more team members that just benefit you and make also what's more enjoyable for you. A lot of bookkeepers love that marketing side. They love the recruitment side. It makes it more exciting to have that part of your activity than just worrying for, having to do daily tasks that are more the back office work. So
yeah, definitely. Thank you for that.
Yeah,
I thought we might spend the last bit of the time talking about supervision and maintenance and of a staff member as well. I know when we're onboarding a client, it's really important to do the training, and we've got a training program inside of Pure Bookkeeping that people can put their staff through to make sure that they're doing best practice. So once you've put staff on, you want to make sure they're doing it your way. So you've done the skills test or some type of testing mechanism, and you've identified where they need the learning. So it's not always that you're going to put somebody on that is 100% past the skills test. They might only pass 80%, or, they've got some deficiencies in some area. That gives you an opportunity to train them in those areas. So it's not always a bad thing that they don't know certain things. It's just a way of identifying where their weaknesses are and where you can give them some more support. So there is that in, upskilling your staff member by identifying that. Certainly a training program that helps them, as I said, go through best practice. And then also for each one of your clients to have, the client manual and your checklists in there for them to know their expectations, but also little training videos on how to do the work so that they know exactly what they need to do with that. And as you mentioned before, Deb, that you're constantly updating your client manuals, your checklists, your training videos. So if a staff is going, I'm continually doing this wrong, or whatever the situation, that you can add that extra information into the client manual and the Loom. We suggest using Loom as training videos. So it's just cementing the success of that staff member by onboarding them. You've got the induction process, the training process, all of the checklists and client manuals there ready for them to go, and then it's just a matter of supervision and maintenance.
Yeah.
How did you treat the supervision, Deb?
Yeah, I Natalie mentioned before that sometimes people have the expectation that if I get a good bookkeeper, then I can just hand it over, because all bookkeepers do things the same way. And my saying, which many of you would have heard before, is if you put 10 bookkeepers in a room, there would be 10 different ways of doing the same task, and some of them would be wrong. So that's what I lived by. That was my mantra. I knew that. And so I didn't care whether they had 30 years bookkeeping experience. I did ask for a minimum of 2 years bookkeeping experience, but it didn't matter if it was 2 or 32. I said, right, now you're on board, you're part of the team. Now these are my systems. So and for the very experienced bookkeepers, I had to, go carefully sometimes, because I would say, I know this might sound like I'm trying to explain how to suck eggs or something like that, but you've got to understand from my perspective, if you put 10 bookkeepers in a room, there'd be 10 different ways of doing the same thing, and some of them would be wrong. So what I want you to come on board is so that you're doing it the way everyone else is doing it. And because you're an experienced bookkeeper, your way of doing things, and when I say doing things, I'm talking about even saving files, saving PDFs, and where people save them and what folders they put them in. That was a nightmare for me when I made the assumption initially is, great, I've got a good bookkeeper, now go away and get the work done and come back to me. And then I'm checking the work and I don't, where have they done that and where have they filed this? And I wasted hours and hours trying to get into their heads. So what I did was I swapped that around and I said, well, I want you to get into my head. So this is my business. This is the way I run it. These are my systems. So I'm now going to provide you the ongoing training so that you learn what my systems are, and feel free to contribute. If you think you know a better way or something that's more efficient or something like that, absolutely tell me, because we've got, one of my core values is open and honest communication. So keep that. It's not that I'm the god of systems. It's I'm a bookkeeper and I have my system. If you know something that's better, feel free to contribute to that. And if I think it's a great idea, then I'll incorporate that, and then I'll train all the other people on my team. So it becomes a collaborative thing where they don't feel like I'm the god of systems. It's like, this is a system that I have created, but feel free to collaborate. I'm not the holder of all the knowledge. You can contribute as well, and that's a respectful way to communicate with your staff.
Natalie, I'd love to hear from you how your clients are supervising their bookkeepers and maintaining their work and just checking in with them.
Well, we try to give them a lot of little tips and tricks in our onboarding process. Because they're remote, it's really about checking in and keeping that door open. So for them to be proactively going towards them, and for them keeping the door open that they can come to them also. I think that's very important, and it's been mentioned quite a bit, being open to letting them question things, because we do get often a feeling that they don't want to be questioned. And that idea of open to collaborate. So it's something that's very refreshing when it's mentioned from the beginning of our discussions, but we really incite them to, so exactly what Deb was saying, we're here to get your ideas. So we try to find also personalities that are open to new ideas of doing things differently if it can be enhanced or improved. So I would say that's the way that we create that maintenance and that supervision that you're mentioning is all around communication. Keeping that the feedback there, because yes, if you're again a bit nose in your work, it's really making those times in schedules that it's blocked in, not canceling it or thinking something's more important. It is actually really important just to touch base, and we like to say even if it's just 10 minutes, because giving them the opportunity to express themselves about how they're feeling about their daily work. Sometimes it's not always going to come out on a monthly, sometimes at a monthly meeting or a quarterly meeting. It has to be that regular communication. So that's what we really incite our partners to do. So I would say that that's the main one. Of course, we set KPIs also, so we're very it's important, but it's all those systems that you were speaking about since the beginning, having checklists, having a training process, so there are all those touch points that are very important in a system. So a lot of what I would say, I think a lot of people just think, oh, we'll wing this and we'll see how it happens. But that's where these systems and processes and that you're used to doing also with all the way you work and how you advise the firms that you work with is so important, because people do think they can wing things in life, but it just doesn't work, especially when you're looking to have a business grow and yes, and be successful.
That's right. I feel the only way that we can move, like we can scale our business, is to be able to leverage from the systems that you create. So it's really important to have those foundations in so that you can continue to scale from that. Yes. One of the things I used to do was meet weekly with my staff and just go, and they would present me with their workload for the coming week. And then we'd talk about priorities and we'd talk about any issues that they would have. So it's, as you say, the good communication, checking in with them and, do that weekly, make sure that they were on track, let them know what they needed to complete by the end of the week, in particular, if I, wanted BASs out or whatever it was, and help them nudge the work along as well. If sometimes bookkeepers will just put their head in the sand or staff, I should say, if their clients aren't hassling them, they're not going to hassle the clients for the work, for the, the information they need. And they'll just often say, well, make excuses. The client didn't get back to me, so I haven't got back to them. So, as a leader, you do need to still, check in on the staff to make sure the processes are being done and why is it not being followed up, and put a system in place for exactly that. If they don't respond by this time, you respond, you follow up then, and then you follow up, and then you tell them what you're going to do. So it's, putting those boundaries around your clients, but also around your staff, how they respect those boundaries too. And then you're having monthly reports, and, I used to have every 6 weeks a training day to train them in something around the softwares. And then your KPIs as well are really important to, bring some of those things into the business to make sure the staff are on track.
It's really about being a manager, and it is a different role. But if you're growing and you're bringing on team members, you're taking on a new role, and if you have to be excited about that and set up a process to become a manager then, and exactly as you said, have systems, have touch points, and very important.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right. So I think we're almost at the top of the hour. Was there anything that anybody wanted to ask a question, or any last comments? One thing, Deb, that we did actually want to mention was the customers, the 5-star service, which we sort of brought into the conversation right at the start. But we did a customer service, 5-star customer service power hour a couple of months ago, I think it was now. It was a little while ago. So I'll get one of the team members to add that power hour link into this power hour in the comments there. So if people do want to, and it was a whole hour based on customer service, what the 5-star customer service is, which is instilling in your staff to make sure that you are providing the exact same service that you provide your staff yourself. Make sure the staff are doing it exactly the same way, and yeah, keeping the level of delivery how you would expect it to be. So that will be another good one to look out for as well.
Yeah, that was really cool. I used to use, sorry, Dan, I used to use that all the time. I'd go through that in detail with my team. So I can't remember where it was, but I remember going through that.
5-star service mind map that I created to overcome a problem that I encountered, where I was thinking about, what is it that clients love about me and what I do? And it wasn't just about the work. It was about how I communicate with them, being reliable, all those sorts of things, which was in that power hour. And I stepped through every one of the elements of what was 5-star service, what did that mean for me in my business? And that was part of the induction process. So in the first hour or two, I would sit down with them and explain, well, again, it's setting expectations. This is what 5-star service means to me. And then what it also enabled me to do was, if they fell short in one of those areas, I would bring back the the mind map, and I'd go, you know, you're doing great over here, but this is where you've actually let the client down. You didn't let them know that you weren't going to be there or do the work, and, you know, but that's disrespectful and all that. So it enables you to come back to it because you've already set the expectation right from the start. It was a really useful tool.
Even to what they wore. I love that bit. Remember that, yeah, this is what you wear. I would read that out. This is what you wear. This is exactly the uniform. And we had a uniform. But can I just quickly add, Katrina, we've talked a lot about communication today, and there's a beautiful NLP phrase called, so if you're not sure if the way you communicate as a leader is landing for your team, this NLP phrase is communication is the response you get. So if you're not getting the response from your team that you'd like, it's how you're communicating it. And I think it's all that stuff you've got in the system, Deb. It's like, I know, because I wasn't a bookkeeper, I would just follow it to a T. Like, I wouldn't question it. I just followed it to a T. And my communication was so, like, exactly what you said, Deb, I would say. And then the response I got was fantastic team that did as I asked. So it was really good. It's amongst, you know, obviously a lot of other stuff. But, yeah, communication is the response you get. I love that little phrase.
Yeah.
Nice. And I think we might finish up on that note.
Ooh.
Thank you all for attending and listening in, and thanks, Natalie, for joining us today. Really
Oh,
appreciate it.
thank you for having me. It was lovely. So speak to you soon.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you, and thanks, Deb and
Thank you.
Sharon.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Have a good day. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.